The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Everybody has their own story and their own journey to share. Every journey conceals another journey within its lines, the path not taken and the forgotten angle. Listen to the stories from others sharing their triumphs and struggles that led them to where they are today. Good morning. Welcome to the Journey Within You. I am just pleased again to have this woman here with us today, Crissy. We have met on the internet. They're a group that lets you introduce yourself with your podcast, and then others say they want to be on your podcast. And I have found it to be really informative and exciting to meet new people. I believe in community. So when you can bring people together this way and get to know other people out there doing what you do, like-minded people, it just helps you grow, right? So this has been fun, and I'm privileged to have her here with us today to share her story. So Crissy, welcome, and I would love for you to share with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I always love the opportunity to be able to share my story in hopes that, it will provide some inspiration and potentially some hope to others out there as well. So who have been on a similar path. So thank you for having me. And yeah, so I guess to go back a little bit about me, born and raised in the state of Maine and grew up on sort of the southern tip of Maine, which borders New Hampshire, and great coastal town. Loved the area, but I had I had challenges just like a lot of us have growing up, and that was my parents when I was 10. They got divorced, and it was a huge surprise to all of us, my mother especially. And financially, it changed our whole world. Everything changed in a matter of minutes, it felt like. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. It's so funny,
And that's something how that just hits you so hard.
Yeah, it's like those moments that just imprint in your brain. The day that my dad told me he was leaving, and just the fear and whys around it. And so, fast forward, I became very quickly a really good pleaser, a really good peacemaker, and a really good fixer. And that became my role in the family. And I have an older brother, and he instead sort of withdrew. And I really leaned in and did everything I could to be the perfect child and please everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And how old was your brother?
He is 3 years older than I am.
3 years older. And that's kind of strange
13.
too, that the brother would kind of draw back. Usually you would think the boy, he's going to take hold and take over and like lead. So it hit him kind of hard.
It did, and still to today, he has a hard time talking about it. He's more introverted than I am, so struggles with really connecting too,
Yeah.
and his go-to is to get really quiet and hide. And so
Yeah.
we did the opposite.
Yeah.
I sort of went forward and said, "Okay, here I am. I'm
I
going to
got to
take
take
care
care
of
of
everybody."
everybody.
Yep.
And that role comes on quick, and then it's hard to kind of let go of that role. So
Exactly.
how old were you when you left your home?
So I ended up going to college again, sort of following the script that my
Yeah.
parents
This
wanted
is
me
what
to
we do.
follow.
Yeah.
Yes, had no idea what was ahead of me because, I had done so much at a young age of, playing this sort of script out of, being the good girl. So I didn't go to parties. I didn't experiment. I didn't do anything because it was so important that I kept my parents happy and kept the peace.
Yeah.
So when I went off to college, at the age of 18, I that was my moment where I didn't know what to do with the freedom.
Yeah.
And while I still wanted to make sure that, I was pleasing my parents and they were proud of me and all of the things and doing the dance, I also made some mistakes right out of the gate with alcohol.
Mm,
And that is actually also where I met my first husband
mm.
and my only husband.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but we are now divorced.
yeah.
But when I met him, we were in an environment where there was a lot of alcohol use and
Mm,
abuse, the constant parties. And it was a good release for a period of
mm-hmm.
time in my life. It was a really good, it numbed a lot of things. I didn't have
Right.
to deal with a lot of things. And I was extremely social.
Mm.
And so it kept that sort of,
It was that feel good, that feel good feeling. Yeah.
absolutely. It was a
Mm-hmm.
constant feel good, feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the next day didn't always feel so
No,
good,
no.
but then it would quickly
You're
start
fine.
back up
I'm good.
again.
Yeah, yeah. Do it
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Exactly. And, so I was so much into that environment. I was so ingrained in that, when I graduated from college, I I just felt like, okay, well, now that's going to end. And now we're going to get jobs and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a family. And so that's when I married my spouse at the time right after college. It was about 2 years out of college. I noticed at that time that there was still a lot of the same behaviors going on, meaning
Mm-hmm.
still a lot of drinking, a lot of people getting together. Not everyone was married yet,
Mm.
children hadn't come into the picture yet. So there was still a lot of that, but I was pulling away from that. I
Yeah.
was
You were like, that was college. Now it's time to be big girl. Yeah. And really
absolutely.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I was still playing that role of, okay, I'm going to do what my parents want me to do, meaning I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get this career, I'm going to get married first
Yeah.
to someone, and we're both going to have these really great careers, and we're going to have children, and we're going to do that
The white
whole
picket
white picket
fence.
fence. You got it.
Yep.
And I
Mm-hmm.
did that, at least that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And in the moment, and, made the parents happy. I thought I was happy. And very quickly, I started to see that his drinking was continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was every single weekend. It
Mm-hmm.
was nights, he had a career, a sales career where, he was constantly traveling.
Yeah. And they always drink. I'm
And that was
sorry. You see a
no,
lot of that in the traveling world with the when they gather up every night. And I'm like, how do they work even?
I
Because I've been
know.
around it and they drink and they drink and they drink. And I'm like, how are you supposed to function the next day for your job?
And thank you for saying that, because I think there are certain careers that promote that
Yeah.
and that kind of behavior, because there's
Yeah.
constant gatherings. You're taking the client out, you're
All
taking
the free alcohol,
all
if
the
you're
free
at the,
alcohol.
yeah, we're paying for it.
Exactly. And so that didn't help him for sure,
Mm,
being in that environment. And so I knew when he was away from me that there was a lot of substance use.
mm.
But I sort of ignored it
Right,
and
right.
just
You're
kept
holding down the fort. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're pleasing.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
moving. I just was moving things forward, doing what I was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Good wife. And so that's what I did. And then he ended up getting involved in other things. He's a really big skier. So he tended to have things that were almost dangerous in nature. Like he
Mm,
lived on
mm,
the edge a little bit.
mm-hmm.
Like he had a very fast-paced job, lots of partying, that whole thing. And then socially or personally, he also had those things where it was like extreme skiing,
Mm-hmm.
all these things that were kind of a constant disruptor and kept him sort of externally facing,
Mm-hmm.
while I continued to think, okay, this is my role. This is what I'm supposed to do as a wife. I'm supposed to, let him have his outlets. He has a stressful job,
Mm,
he's doing well. So I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna keep doing making the dinners, making sure the
Taking care of
house,
the house. Hmm.
yep, working my job for now until I have children, all of that. And so I did a lot of ignoring during
Hmm.
that phase because I thought, again, this was my path
Yeah.
and this
I
is what
have
I
a
had.
house. Things are good, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was what I had committed to. And so
Hmm.
I I was going to continue and I absolutely did love him. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely did. Um and that was what made all of this really
Even
hard.
harder. Hmm.
Yeah. And then the most beautiful gift came into my life, which was my
Mm.
son, my
Yeah.
firstborn. And what an angel he was from and still is from day one. And he changed my entire life
Hmm.
in a matter of seconds.
Seconds. Yeah. I had my boy first too.
Oh, and you know
Yeah.
that as a
Yeah.
mother, you know that connection,
Hmm.
that immediate God love,
I still have
pure.
chills just thinking about the day he was born.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. I mean, I remember them putting him on my chest and he had his eyes closed and he was crying and I spoke and he
You
stopped
just calmed
crying
right
and
down.
he opened his eyes and he looked at
Hmm.
me. And I remember that moment and I
Yeah.
said, "Thank you, God. Thank
Yeah.
you."
Yeah.
Like,
For this precious gift.
yes, and I am
Hmm.
going to do everything in my power to protect him.
Hmm.
And that became my next role in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
my next purpose,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As a mom,
That's
you
what I
know,
did. Yeah.
we jump into that
Hmm.
identity, right? So quick.
Hmm.
And that's our purpose. That's our, is to take care of them and protect them. And
Hmm.
so nothing else mattered in that
Right.
moment. The drinking that was still going on with my spouse, him constantly doing all these extracurriculars, being outside of the house, none of that mattered. I was like, my role is to be the best mom for this
Yeah.
child and to
Yeah.
protect him.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's all my world was. It became just him and I, nothing else
Yeah.
mattered.
Yeah. And so I think it happens to so many
Hmm.
women.
Hmm.
And so we sort of lose sight, at least I did, of myself in
Oh,
that
definitely.
process.
Each time you're getting chiseled away of who you
Absolutely.
were called to be and who you are. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
And
nothing wrong taking the role as a mom, a wife, all those things, but we're not to lose ourselves in it. And we so quickly do.
yes. Yeah. And I think, it's that nurturer where it's naturally in
Hmm.
us to be that
Fixer.
fixer, that nurturer. And so when we have that child, it's like, okay, I know my role.
Hmm.
I'm in there. And so there were lots of conversations that, with my spouse about his drinking, about,
Yeah.
okay, we have a child now. Like
Hmm.
now the fun, this whole
Can we really
college.
get serious now? Yeah.
Yeah. Can we now, really be serious, be adults, whatever that looks like,
Hmm.
and, raise this child in the way that we want to in a loving environment, supportive
Hmm.
environment. And he was on board. His words were on board. And I know he loves my son, and
Oh
I
yeah.
know
Oh yeah.
there's no doubt in my mind about that.
Hmm.
But he couldn't stop.
Mm.
And I kept thinking I could fix him.
Yeah.
And man, did I become the best codependent I could possibly be.
Hmm. Hmm.
And constantly fixing. I know I can make this better. I know I can
Hmm.
make him stop. If, I
We
tell
just do
him,
this, or if I say the right words. Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah. And I really truly believe that. I
Oh, I
really
did too.
did.
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
do. And it continued as I had my second child. So
Hmm.
my daughter was born 2.5 years later. Again, a complete gift. I was lucky
Yeah.
enough to
Same
have
thing
one
for
of
me.
each.
Two and
Yeah.
a half years later, a daughter. Yeah.
And so beautiful and so different in so many ways.
Oh, so
And
many ways.
yeah, and they are to this day,
Yeah. Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
different. But once again, I was in. I was in 100% because I was going to take care of these children and he was going to get better because
Right.
now he had a daughter
Yep.
and he wanted one of each. And
Yep.
I was like, I gave him both. Now he's
So
going to
now things should
change.
be all good. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, everything's good. And so, so it continued, to the point of like I said, he loved to ski and do other things and go out. And I lived this life of waking up in the middle of the night with wondering where he was.
Mm.
He wasn't home, texting him, calling him, fearing the worst that he was
Mm-hmm.
on the side of the road somewhere
Yeah.
in a ditch or had been in a bad car accident. And always thinking the worst. And of course, he never answered his phone. He either always lost it or he was blacked out
So
somewhere
much
and
that he couldn't. Yeah.
couldn't find it. And
Mm.
so, but I was so afraid that more than anything, that my children were going to wake up and find him somewhere.
Yeah.
So I would literally get up in the wee hours of the morning and just search the house.
Mm.
Wonder,
To make
look at,
sure
well,
that he wasn't laying around somewhere.
exactly. And, there was, I'll never forget, there was one morning where I was searching everywhere and his car was in the driveway, but I couldn't find him anywhere. And I finally went to the front door and opened the door and I hit his head.
Mm.
He had literally passed out on the cement stairs on my front porch.
Mm. Mm.
And I just remember being so humiliated because we
Yeah.
have a neighbor directly across the
Yeah.
street, and
And
here he is
they're seeing it.
laying, yep,
Yeah.
sprawled out. And oh boy, and the anger always ensued right
Yeah.
after.
Oh,
And
yeah.
just, I mean, so much anger in me that I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
think I had.
Uh-uh. No.
It
Yeah.
was incredible. And so
Mm-hmm.
So then he would every single time, it's like
I'm
an
sorry.
abuser. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
I
love you.
won't do this again.
I won't
Yeah.
do it again.
Yeah.
And boy, did I hear that script so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, it got to the point where he had gone out one night. And this was, my kids were at that point, my son was probably 12. My daughter was probably about 10.
Mm-hmm.
And he had gone skiing again. And he was supposed to come home that night. He called me. And I always knew when he had been drinking.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
knew,
Oh,
even
yeah.
though
Oh,
he
yeah.
thought I didn't know.
Yeah.
It was the way he talked and, how I just always knew.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, I'm not coming home. And
Mm.
I said, okay, well, then you better not come home at all.
Yeah.
And he said, oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. Okay. We'll talk more tomorrow. Well, I get a call first thing in the morning that he was in jail.
Mm.
So he had that night after we talked, he had driven his car down an icy road and he ran
Mm.
directly into a tree with someone in the passenger seat.
Mm-mm.
He was lucky enough to escape. However, another car saw this happen and reported it to the police. And the police
Mm-hmm.
showed up at his door and arrested him.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I just remember seeing him the next morning and I was done.
Yeah.
I,
And
in
it's
that
something
moment,
how you finally, the blinders come off, all the mask that you've put on for being all the things you were just falls to the ground.
oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, he was so good he's so good at his job, like a
Oh, yeah.
salesman.
Oh, yeah.
And he even managed to get himself out of losing his license
Mm.
because he had to drive for work. It was part of the
Yeah.
requirement. But he
Yeah.
knew enough people in the community.
To make it happen.
He made it happen behind the scenes. And I thought this is going to be the best thing for him. He's going to lose his job. He's going to
Yeah.
hit rock bottom. But no, he
No,
figured
he
out a
was
way,
saved again. Yeah.
saved again. And this happened to him so many times throughout his life. I mean, he went in the hospital, he almost died, hitting his head, doing other things. And it was enough for me though. It was it. Like But my biggest fear was the one thing that held me back, which was protecting my children.
Mm-hmm.
And I had myself believing that if I'd leave now before my children have their license, he could get in a
Be in a
car
wreck with
accident with
them.
them in the
Yeah.
car. And
Yeah.
I had nothing to prove that he was a danger to them.
Yeah.
So in that way,
Right. Right.
and I knew they loved him.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those really hard things is,
Mm-hmm.
they need their father, and
Mm-hmm.
they love their father. He would never intentionally harm them,
Mm-mm.
but there was so much fear that that could happen by accident
Mm.
that
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't leave.
Yeah. So you hung on till they were able to drive.
You got it. My oldest got his license, and it wasn't a month after that that I filed for divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it. I had it in my mind. I mean, we had already
Mm-hmm.
separated multiple times. We had, gone through all this therapy. And so it wasn't like I was just making this on a whim. I
Right.
mean,
Right. You
we
knew.
tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could never say I didn't try.
Mm-hmm.
But so not only was it my kids, it was also the disappointment to everybody else,
Yeah. Yeah. And
of
that we
I
carry that
failed.
so heavy because you're in the community and people think everything's fine, that you guys have a great home, you have a family, you have all the dreams that so many want. Yet you are crumbling and falling apart daily. And they can
Oh,
see that. And so when you do divorce, they're like, oh my gosh, what was wrong with them? Because you had covered it up so
absolutely.
well for him, the rescuer, the protector. I'm sure there's people out there that knew but didn't know, that he was an alcoholic and that he
Oh,
had a problem.
only my closest friends knew, and
Mm-hmm.
they were my outlet and my mother. And
Mm-hmm.
besides that, I kept it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And oh yeah, we had everything. We had a beautiful house. We had another home in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
We had, I mean, he provided.
Mm-hmm.
And to everybody else, it looked like, we have great kids. They're in all the activities,
Mm-hmm.
very involved in the community. Nobody knew this secret. And I
Yeah.
did a really good job making sure nobody knew the secret.
Yeah. Yeah. It's embarrassing. And you didn't want people talking because you knew what a good man he was and is. But he has a problem. He has an
Yeah.
illness. And people don't always see that, that way. They think people can just stop. I mean, he needs help.
Yeah.
Alcohol is a problem. And people that casually drink that turn into the casual drinks that turn into drinks that turn into, just keeps going. That's a problem. It's
It
not just
is.
part of your daily thing.
Yeah.
It's an illness.
And I think the hardest part after the divorce, honestly, was my children being exposed to it more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you
I
not having
was,
control over the situations. Yeah.
yes, I was so good at even hiding it from them
Mm-hmm.
that they would never find him around the house. They would never see it. And then when I was gone, they saw it all. And boy, was it scary, especially my oldest.
Mm.
The protector. He is also like his mother, very much
Mm-hmm.
the fixer. And
Mm-hmm.
he is always worried about his dad.
Mm.
And because he sees it even more now, and there's been a lot of situations since we've divorced where my kids have found him.
I've been in that situation. Mm.
Yeah, it's sad. And so one lesson that I learned through all of this, and if there's any women out there going through this, is to talk to your children about it.
Yeah.
Talk to them early on in a way that they can understand it so that they don't think that it's them. They don't think that, they can fix it.
Right.
And get them help because there's so many resources out there. Al-Anon obviously is one of them, but where they can get the support that they need because
Mm.
children of an alcoholic or an addict um, develop their own sort of coping
Yes,
mechanisms
they do.
that
Mm-hmm.
aren't healthy.
No.
And so I just say, talking about it, not talking about it was the biggest mistake that I made,
Right.
and trying to protect them.
Right. Because you didn't want them to think of their father any less. You wanted them to
Exactly.
see the good that they got to see when they saw it. And I could see that too because I was the same way with mine. I didn't want them to know, but yet my son was in a situation where the father took it out on him. And
Oh,
so there was the abuse and that went on, and you're trying to save him from that, but yet he still clinged to his father, and that was just the weirdest part of the divorce for me was watching him go away with his dad, knowing what his father was capable of doing. But it changed. It went more to mental abuse than anything. But it's just a scary thing in a divorce for anybody. And I loved how we always talk about the women in divorce or in narcissist relationships, but there are guys out there that are going through this too, that have
yes.
a woman being the what we say the men are. So I always want my audience to know we're not just saying that women go through this. There's men out there that are going through it that have been in a situation where they're with a narcissist or an addict or someone that drinks all the time and trying to figure out how to help them, but yet get out of it and divorce because they're not going to change. I mean, thank God for the ones that do and come through it and see, yeah, I need help here. Let me go get help. But the ones that want to stay in it and you know that you need to get out of it, I mean, you can do it. It's not easy. We both know we had hard roads in that.
Mm-hmm.
Making that decision, it took me a long time. I say 15 years. I mean, I kept staying too. I can change it. I can fix it. And knowing that I couldn't change it, it was the same day. My mask fell off. I was like, I'm done. We got to do something different here. This is not working.
Yeah.
And so making that decision was something healthy for you and your children, although it's still not easy, and that he has not yet seen what alcohol is doing.
No, and he would say, I've changed even after the divorce. I've changed. And the empath, I'm very high empath, and I've worked on
Yeah.
that as well. And it can be very good, and it can
Mm-hmm.
also be very detrimental to
Mm-hmm.
me. And so he didn't want the divorce, and he begged, and it was so hard to go through because I wanted him to be better.
Yeah, you did.
I still want him to be better,
Yeah.
and for himself, for his kids, because he is a good person. It's the disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point, it is definitely men and women that deal with
Mm-hmm.
this. And regardless of who you are, you can't fix them unless they want to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to hit that point, and some people don't. And it is a very sad moment when you come to that point
Yeah.
of they just can't, or they just don't want to,
Yeah.
and letting go because you love that person under there,
Yeah.
or beneath it all. And you have to realize for yourself that the only way to escape it is to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And
And you have to because you've got to find yourself again, right? You're slowly coming back to who Chrissy was or is meant to be. Because again, you gave yourself away so much during all that time that you forgot, well, who am I even? That's me. I went 2 years it took me to just kind of finally like, oh yeah, I am worthy. I am someone that God created to do more and be.
yeah,
And not, I was blessed to be a wife, blessed to be a mother, all those things. But he didn't want with those titles to be all the other things that I added, like the fixer, the one that pleased everybody, that kept it quiet, the peace. I was the peacemaker for sure. I was always trying to make sure everything was right before it, so there was no arguing, or no incidents happening in front of the children. And that's tiring. It's hard work. You realize after you get out, you're like, oh, I know, I don't, how did I carry all that? You know?
yeah.
Um, thank gosh for the Lord and his leading and my relationship with him, or I wouldn't be here today. I
Hmm.
truly feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like we would all still be in that same pattern of where we are because we didn't have faith and trust to get us out of it and to be better and do better.
Absolutely. And I think it's waking up to those signs that are right in front of us
Oh yeah.
too. And because I was
Don't
so
ignore
much
them.
Yeah, I was so much in my mind about I can fix this, I can make it better. And the noise just wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
quiet
Mm-hmm.
long enough for me to even go in and, pray or, journal or just even like get quiet enough where I could see
Mm-hmm.
all the messages that were right in front of me that were telling me all along, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay
Yeah.
to leave and to take care of yourself.
Right. And
Yeah.
your children will be resilient through all of this. We think they can't handle it. We don't give them enough credit because sometimes they better are than we are at handling things. And yes, I agree in getting them help. The resources are out there for them. Connect with right people, of course. Don't just go to anybody, but connect with people that can help encourage and your children and have a safe place to talk about it. Because, even you as a mom, they don't always need to talk to you. They need to talk to someone else that's, don't know their story, that can lead them in a way that they don't feel guilty about how they got to react to it by talking to the mom. They always want to be pleasing to us,
Yeah.
right? And so I knew that was something my kids needed. They needed someone else, good Christian that could lead them in a way that, they're okay. It's not their fault if what else happened.
Yeah.
Um, that's their dad that's made choices. And we all are free at that, at making choices. And that's the choice he's making right now. The alcohol has more power over him that he wants to admit. He still
Hmm.
feels like he's changing, and maybe he has some, but yet it still has control over him.
Yeah,
And
it
until
does.
he comes to that rock bottom or the choice is made for him, that's where he'll be.
Yeah. And what I realized is I needed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, I think, excuse me, even after my divorce, I was so quiet on this topic. I
Mhm.
was so afraid to tell my story because I didn't want to hurt him. I
Right.
didn't
And
want
you're
to.
not intentionally doing that. No. And I think this is a more openness to make women know, or men, that there are people that care truly about them
Hmm.
and want to see change for them so that they can have the relationships that they've destroyed or destroying. Um, and I'm glad you've taken the courage to do that and share with others, because there's a woman right now probably battling that. What do I do? How do I get out of this? Or why am I staying? Do I stay? All those questions that come over us.
Yeah. Oh, and that I stayed in that space forever. I'm glad you said that. Is that should I stay or should I go? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I could convince myself, depending on the day,
Mm-hmm.
either one of those things.
Yeah. Oh,
Today I
look what
can
he did
stay.
today. Today's good. And
Every
so
day
why
was
am I even
different.
thinking about leaving? That's horrible of me. I've got
Hmm.
all these things because I had the same thing. I had a beautiful home, had all the things, had the great fellowship with people, and only like you said, closest people knew about what was going on, but the group that we hung with and did things with, they didn't have a clue, how stressful things were in our home.
Yeah,
And when that happened, they were shocked. And some helped and understood, and some went away. They
yeah,
just didn't understand, why would you do something like that? You're a Christian and you should make your marriage work. Yeah, I believe 100%. I gave all I could. You know, I did. I tried the counseling. I did all the things that they want you to do and try to saving your marriage, praying 100% all the time. But then I got the
yeah,
permission to get
yeah.
out of it, and that I was not a horrible person for doing that. And
No,
again, I respected their kids, the father of my children, but I also had to pull away from that. And they
yeah,
could build that relationship with their dad how they saw fit, because they were older also. And then as they learned and saw the things in a better view instead of from my view, right? Because my view is covering it up,
yeah,
they were able to deal with it in a way they need to deal with it.
yeah.
And still dealing with it. On your case, your kids are still learning
Oh,
how to
yeah.
navigate.
Absolutely. And they love him. And I
Yeah.
would never want
And
that
you
to
never want
change.
that to be different.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, and there's so much fear, I think, not only in the process of obviously the fear of protecting my children, but also this fear of financial insecurity. What am I
Yeah.
going to do now? He made
Yeah.
he was the primary
The
breadwinner. And,
money,
how was I going to do this? And
being
that was
alone.
the
Yet you
fears that
were
come
physically,
in.
mentally, you were really alone, but yet we feel like we're not. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Until they actually leave,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I want to share is that, I lived in this, walking on eggshells for years and,
Mm-hmm.
fixing and pleasing. And I thought, okay, when I get out of this marriage, I am going to be living my best life. This is going to be amazing because I won't have to be dealing with, is he coming home? Is he
Right.
not? All these other
Right.
things. And then I was so surprised and I guess disappointed at the same time that it wasn't like that. In the
Yeah.
beginning, all the fears came up, all the
Mm.
uncertainty, the shame, the guilt, oh my God, people are probably questioning why I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
everything that you said, but
Mm-hmm.
also the piece around, can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, and I know you'll probably say the same thing, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's about believing, it's about, you know, really going in and letting go of those old identities of, the wife,
Mm-hmm.
the mother, that while we are those things and those are important to us throughout our lives, who we really are at our core is what's
Right.
important. And, here I am in this big house that I thought I had to keep for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, I'd be doing such a disservice to them if I leave. And then coming to terms with no, wherever we are, we're
That's
still going to
home.
be together and there's going to be
Yeah.
love and we're going to support one another. And I did. I sold my big house. We moved into a condo and it was
Isn't it amazing? I mean,
amazing.
yeah,
Most
you
amazing
dropped
thing.
so many identities. You had identity in that house
Yes.
because that was the perfect place for my family, my husband. That's what we're supposed to do. Have all the things, the white picket fence, all that
Hmm.
sounds cliche, but that's the stuff we fall into so quickly from high school out. We just start building all these identities that because we're supposed to. And until we release that, I mean, look how much freedom you got from that and being in your own place now, it's
Yeah.
y'all's. It's not the identity that you had.
No, it's so different. And
Mm-hmm.
when I moved there, to be able to create a space that
Yeah.
was solely mine
Yeah.
and my children's,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, I called it my sanctuary
Oh,
because
beautiful. Yeah,
I
I like that.
created, the
Yeah.
colors,
Yeah.
the pictures, the quotes, everything that was
Mm-hmm.
around me
You knew the
was
vibe that you wanted to flow through that home. Yeah.
absolutely. And it was truly my sanctuary. It was
Yeah.
like, wow, and I get to build this however I want and
Mm-hmm.
create new traditions with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was stuck,
Yeah.
and so that is why I during COVID was a blessing and a curse for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us, right? And
Yes. Yes.
I was alone and had moved into this condo and I was feeling so great. And I'm like, why am I feeling so good? And I'm like, you know what? It's because I'm not stuck in that uncertainty anymore. I'm not stuck in that fear
The
anymore.
what ifs.
The what ifs, all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I want to help other women be able to
Mm.
do this as well. And
Yeah.
so that's when I started the From Mrs. to Me.
I love that
Um,
name.
thank you.
That's
And
good.
because it truly was that. It was a
Yeah, it
journey.
is. It hits. When I read that, I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I know exactly how that feels. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? Rediscovering that
Mm-hmm.
and or discovering things for the first time, which
Right.
I did about myself and
Yeah.
how much even in my friendships and with my family, I
Mm-hmm.
was showing up as this codependent and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I didn't really have any idea who I was. And
No.
so things change. My friends, to your point, some of my
Yeah.
friends changed. Some of those people in the community changed. And at first it was hard,
Yeah.
But
It felt
now as I
strange.
look back, it was a
Hmm.
gift,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Definitely a gift. And that's how I looked at it too, is just release, a lot of releasing.
Yeah.
And then the word I've used this year so much is, or since last year, up August, is pivot. I had to pivot.
Yes, I love that.
Hmm. And that's just from different things going on now in my life. And I did meet another gentleman and married for 27 years now. So that's another thing I want people listening today is to know, once you make this decision to get out, don't think your life's over. And if you want love again and want to have the meaning of a true marriage, it's there. Let God prepare you and that person. Don't rush it, because again, you're finding who you are, the me. You got to find that again, right? So you don't want to jump into something so quickly. I see that happen too often too, like divorce, boom, in another relationship. And I'm like, wait, whoa, you didn't grow. You didn't get back to where you're supposed to be. And the same thing's going to happen again. You're going to be in
Yes,
another mess. Maybe. I can't say all, but you
right.
know, and I didn't say 2 years had to be the magic number. That's what it was for me. That I felt, okay, now I think I'm ready, and still was scared to death to even think about meeting someone. But yeah, it's a
But
journey.
it is a journey, and I'm so glad you said that. I have the most amazing man in my life, and
Oh,
it's been 2 years, just over 2 years.
yeah.
And but it was a journey, and I've been divorced for 5 years now, and I made some mistakes. To your
Mm-hmm.
point, I jumped into one relationship way too quickly right
Mm.
after, ended up being, covert narcissist to
Yeah.
the extreme.
Yeah.
And it hit me really hard.
You're
And
like, what am I doing? Yeah.
I was like, no, 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 you are not ready.
Mm.
And that is when it was really after that that I said, okay, it's time to get find out who you really are
Mm-hmm.
and what you want out of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the right partner will show up at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And it
It
absolutely
did.
did happen. Yes.
That's so cool. I'm so glad to hear that. Chrissy, this has been great. I've been so glad to have you on my podcast. And I like to end, I have a deck of cards here. There's just scripture text, and I shuffle through them as we're talking. And whatever's on top is our scriptures, what's meant for us today. And it says, the Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. And that's Exodus 15:2. And I just love that, how
That
he
couldn't be more perfect.
yeah, I'm telling you, he always puts the right one on top. I'm just like, okay, I know you're here in the midst of all of this. And one more thing, I love to ask my guests, what is something that you like to collect?
That I like to collect. Oh, wow. So I first of all, books. I'm a
Hmm.
huge, I've
If you saw the
so
stacks around me right
if you
now.
saw, I mean, books that inspire me
Mm,
are everywhere. I have a bookcase actually directly across from me right now, and I highlight them and I go
yes.
in and anything that touches me, I highlight and I put a little sticky note
Yep.
in there so that I can go back to them because they're inspiration for
Oh
me.
yeah. Yeah.
So I would say that, yeah, I think books are
Well, if
definitely
you haven't got this one, you need to add it to your list. It's called
focus.
Focus. Oh, and
Okay.
now my camera's going crazy because I moved. Um, but yeah, this is taking one word a week that'll transform your life. And this writer is incredible, Clarice Cherie Reeves, and it's called Focus. And I'm just like, I highlight like crazy all the way through this thing. And I start on Sunday with a word, and then every day I read it. And it's like 2 pages for each word, and then scripture tied to that word. And so, like this week,
Um,
my word is honesty. And then several of the words have been like seek, rhythm, alert, um, kindness. And it's so cool to see how he brings that all into scripture and how it applies to your life. And then that word, how it just flows for the week. I mean, it's like, oh, wow, that's the word I needed this week. And so I can't say enough about this book. I hope to get this woman on my podcast. I'd love to have her because she's just a gift in writing. And I love seeing that women take and use their gifts, their purpose. And
Yeah.
I can't speak enough about that book. So anyway,
Oh,
put that one on your
thank you. I
list.
wrote that down. I'm always looking for
Yeah,
good
you
inspirational
will love
books.
it. Everybody that I've offered it to and showed about it, they come back, oh my gosh, you're right. This book is so good. It's just the way it hits each week. And I stress, read it every single day, that word and the 2 pages. And something else will jump out at you and what she's saying in that. So, and I know it's God given from her, to her through her. Just so good. But
Yeah,
anyway, I
I'm
just
gonna order it.
appreciate you being on. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Honestly, this has been such a great conversation, and I always find it to be so great to be able to share your story. It really, it really,
It really is.
I hope it helps someone else out there.
It will. Thank you for joining my podcast today. We all have a story to share. Each story has purpose and makes an impact to you, the listener, creating a journey with passion and purpose. The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Please share with others and subscribe below.